Hello and welcome back. Now in this video we want to create another method. Now this method we want to create will consume messages coming from the review service. So once a buyer adds a review, the review from the front end will go to the API gateway. From the API gateway it will go to the review service. So once the review is updated in the review service database, then we're going to publish a message from the review service to the user service, okay? And then in the user service, we're going to consume that message. And then once we consume the message and use the message, we are going to publish a message from this service as well, okay? So we are going to publish a message from this service and send it to the gig service, okay? So I'll show you how we can also publish a message. Once we consume, then we can publish another message, okay? But now this function or this method we want to create, the consumer, the exchange type is going to be different. Previously we've been using the direct exchange. This time we are going to use the fan out exchange, okay? So from the review service, once the message is published, we're going to use the fan out, and then every consumer listening to that or connected to the queue with the same exchange name, then all messages will be sent to or consumed by those consumers, okay? So we are going to use a fan out. Let me duplicate this function right here, okay? So I'll duplicate the function. I'll call this consume review fan out messages, okay? I think I need to make some changes here. We can take these ones out, okay? And then we'll just pass for now, just passing only the type, okay? So now let's make changes. So from I can export this. So from the review service, I'll call this Jobber Review. You can call it whatever name you want, but the exchange name is going to be Jobber Review. And then the queue name. Now the queue name is going to be Seller Review Queue. So the idea is if a buyer adds a review, okay, for a particular gig, if we go to model, if a buyer adds a review for a particular gig, then we want to also add that review. We want to update these properties in the seller's object or the seller's document, okay? So here the queue name is going to be Seller Review Queue. Now for this, we don't need a routing key. For the fan out, we don't need a routing key, okay? So remember, for the direct, we need a routing key, but for the fan out, we don't need a routing key. So here we are going to assert the exchange, but the exchange type is going to be fan out, okay? So what fan out means is if a message is published and sent to the exchange, and then every message or every consumer listening for messages to a particular queue will receive that message. But if it's the direct, the exchange will send the messages directly to the queue and the consumers will get it from the queue, okay? But this time every queue or every consumer listening to the queues with this fan out exchange type, they will receive the message, okay? So the exchange name is fan out, and then as well we assert the queue. And now to bind the queue, we don't have a routing key, so we use empty strings, okay? So we use these empty strings because we are using a fan out. We don't need a routing key, okay? And then the next thing is for us to consume, okay? I think I'll just change this error message name, okay? And then this as well, I will change this here, okay? Now what I want to do is I will check if the type, so if type is equal to buyer-review, okay? So when the message is coming from the review service, if the type is buyer review, then I want to update, I'll call await update seller review method, okay? So if you remember this method, let's go. Yeah, this method, we want to use it to update these properties, okay? So here we are going to pass in, I can pass in the complete JSON pass. Okay, so this will take in JSON pass. Let's see. Okay, yep. So this is just what we need to do. And then once the update is done, we want to publish a message. Now the message we want to publish, we want to send it to the gig service. Okay, so that is what we could probably have sent it directly from the review service to the gig service, but no, I don't want to do that. So instead, I will just, once we update this part, then we send it from here to the gig service. Okay, so I'll say await publish. It's going to be a direct exchange. Okay, and here we are going to pass in the channel. Okay, and then the name of the exchange is going to be Jobber updates gig, and then the routing key is going to be updates gig. The message, I'll say JSON.stringify. Now I'm going to pass in an object, and then here I'll pass in a log message. Okay, so here I'm going to pass in an object. I'll set the type. The type will be updates gig. Okay, and then the gig review, these are just properties I want to send, is going to be message.contents. Let me add a comma here. .toString. Okay, so these are the messages, or the messages we want to publish to the gig service. And then here I can say message sent to gig service. Okay, so here it's simply, once we get the fan out message from the review service, then we check if the type is equal to buyer review. Then we update the seller's properties like ratings count, rating sum, rating categories, and then we publish a message from this user service. We send it to the gigs service. Okay, so this is what we need for our method. Okay, let me just format this right here. Okay, and now there's one last method I want to add. That method is going to be a direct method, but it's going to be related to the seeding function we are going to create in our gig service. Okay, so when we create the seeding for the gig will request for some user sellers documents. Okay, so for example, we want to create 10 gigs, then we are going to request for random sellers. Okay, so this is the message or the function that will consume the messages and then publish it back to the gig service. So let me duplicate this function. Okay, I'll call this consume seed gig direct messages. Okay, so and let me export it. Okay, so now the exchange name, I'll call it Jobber gig, and then the queue, we're going to need a routing key. So const, because it's going to be a direct exchange, routing key equal to, I'll say user gig queue, or get sellers. Let me just call it get sellers, whatever name you want to use. Okay, and then the queue name, I'll call this user gig queue. Okay, and now the exchange type is going to be direct. Okay, the exchange type is going to be direct, and we are going to need the routing key right here. Okay, so this message will come from the gig service once we create the, or once we call the endpoint to seed gig data. Okay, and now right here we are going to check if types is equal to get sellers. Okay, if type is equal to get sellers, then I want to get the count. Okay, I'll get the property count. Okay, so this count is going to be the number of random sellers we want to get. Okay, so it's going to be number of random sellers, and remember we already have that function here. If we scroll, it says get random sellers, it takes in the size. Okay, so this is the method we want. So I'll say const sellers of type iSeller document. It's going to be an array equal to await get random sellers, and then let me set this, and I'll just call pass int, and then with the count, and then if you want you can pass the base right here. Okay, so this will get the random sellers based on the count, and then we want to send this information back to the gig service. Okay, and then I'll publish a direct message. Now the exchange name will be Jobber Seed Gig. That is going to be the exchange, and then the routing key will be receive sellers. Okay, and then the message, I'll set the type to receive sellers, and then I'll pass in the sellers property. So I'll pass in the sellers, and then I'll send back the count. Okay, and then I can say message sent to gig service. Okay, it's still fine. Okay, message sent to gig service. Okay, so here we are going to get the consume messages coming from the gig service. Okay, with exchange name, the routing key, the queue name, and then we get the data that it's requested, and then we send the message back, okay, to the gig service. Now that we have this, let us go ahead and use them. So consume fan out messages. So I will use it here. Let me import this, and then consume seed messages. Okay, and then I will import them. Okay, so now at this point, I'll say we have all the methods we need inside our user consumers. Okay, so we have all the 4 consumer functions that we require.